Okay, here we go. はい。
はい。
それでは、リーさん、今日、コラボに出演していただいてありがとうございます。
ありがとうございます。
まず、リーさんの自己紹介お願いしたいと思います。
はい。ありがとうございます。こんにちは、皆さん。私は、名前はリーさんです。リースウェツ。私はカナダ人です。YouTube とモデルです。はい。on my channel, コスプレを自己啓発ビデオ旅行映画など、はい、いや。ごめん皆さん、私の日本語は本当に悪い。
大丈夫です、大丈夫です。
Yeah, it was much better when I was living in Japan, I can tell you that. I've spoken Japanese once here since I've been home for I think it's been 6 or 7 months since I flew home.
Oh.Yeah, it's long term. こうやってね、日本語を話してるリーさんは、ちょっとね、ストーリーについていろいろ伺いたいと思いますが、まず日本を好きになったきっかけ、日本に来ようと思った理由について少し教えてください。
この答を少し長いのですが、英語で教えても大丈夫ですか？
大丈夫です。後で字幕つけますので。はい。
ありがとう。So, originally I wanted to come to Japan as a kid when I found Tokyo Mew. My 一番アニメ。
一番好きな一番好きなアニメですか？
はい、はい。in 2007, so a really long time ago. And it was through Tokyo Mew that I discovered, oh my gosh, Pokemon and Sailor Moon are from Japan. I didn't know that. A whole new world opened up from YouTube. And I decided then and there, I was like, I need to go to Japan. And throughout that time in school, I found out more and more about Japan and idol culture as well. And I found Hello Project, Morning Musume to Kyoto to Betty's Kobo. Hi. So from that point, I was like, I need to go to Japan. It is my dream. So I first got to come in 2016 after really trying to save my money with my best friend. And I just fell in love with the country all over again. I got to go to a Hello Project concert. I got to go see Kyoto and lots of Tokyo. And it was just an absolute dream come true. And after that, I knew I needed to come back. I just didn't know when that would happen. I had to work at a unfortunate job. I had unfortunately very, very bad coworkers and a very bad boss, an alcoholic, unfortunately.
You mean
at home. So after I first came to Japan. So after a few years of that, I had kind of I don't know if you guys have this in Japan, but kind of like a quarter life crisis, kind of like a midlife crisis, but earlier. And I was very unhappy, and my first thought was when was the last time I was truly happy? And it was when I was in Japan. And at that time, it had already been 2.5 years since I had been there. And I decided, you know what, I'm gonna do whatever I can to get back there. So I decided, you know what, I'm gonna learn Japanese. I'm gonna do that. And I was supposed to go in 2019. And unfortunately, a month before I was supposed to go, I got a blood clot.
Oh.
Yeah, and turns out I got that because this is going to sound so weird, but I got a blood clot from too much muscle.
Oh.
Yeah. Very weird. happens to 1% of the population, apparently, at least according to my doctors. And because of that, I wasn't able to move to Japan when I wanted to. And I had to wait a whole year to go. And so obviously that was very hard to deal with because I've never had health issues before that. Especially the fact that it was that close to being able to go. So after a year had passed and my doctors said, okay, you're stable, you're still gonna have to be on medication, but you are stable and you can leave now. I was like, okay, great. And then they told me that at the beginning of March 2020.
Coronavirus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then like literally 2 weeks later, everything closed.
Oh my God. Yeah, it was really a horrible time. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So then I waited 2 years and then I finally got to go. And I decided just before I was about to leave that I was going to vlog the whole experience. I was thinking, wouldn't it be more interesting if people got to see it actually happen in real time?
Yeah.
And
so could you tell us a little bit more about your life in Japan? About 日本に住んでよかったと思ったこと So about your experience, maybe good experience, and what things surprised you.
Okay. So I noticed, like, I think I had a very unique experience being able to come to Japan when the borders were still closed for the majority of the world. When I went, it was still closed off to anyone without a visa. So
was it last year?
Yeah. I actually flew out exactly a year ago. So just before it was completely open, and having that contrast to the first time I was there when there was obviously like nothing was wrong with the world and everything was good. I noticed that this time, it wasn't that Japanese people were rude. I never experienced really any rudeness, thankfully, but I did notice almost like more nervousness around me. And I'm thinking it's just because they're so used to like not having any English speaking people really around because the borders being closed. So I noticed that a lot more people were less likely to, like, if I'm looking lost or whatever, they're less likely to offer help. I'd have to like make sure I go out of my way to ask for help if I like really needed it. And it was a good test to make me learn more Japanese. So I will give it that. So it was definitely a learning curve there. But I think I'm still incredibly grateful to be able to say that I was there before the borders opened, because like I got to see, my favorite part about going there was going to see Kyoto a second time and getting to see the shrine, like that very famous Red Gate shrine. I forget the name of it off the top of my head. That was my favorite memory for this trip, like out of everything. I got, when I went there, everyone was so polite, but there was so much of it that there was no people around. And I got the most incredible shots on my camera. So when I vlogged that whole thing, like no one was around, I wasn't bothering anyone. And it was so quiet that you could hear the cicadas on my camera. And it was just, it was amazing. I felt like I was walking in a movie. I was like, this is the coolest experience ever. I can't wait to show my parents this.
So
now I think that was my favorite thing.
Yeah, now it's completely different because, you know, many tourists now are coming in Japan, and now it's really crowding.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move to our next question. What was it about culture differences you felt in Japan?
So I think cultural shock wasn't really a thing for me, to be honest. Just because like I tried to do as much research on Japan as much as possible. I didn't want to be like that foreigner. I was making all the mistakes. I'm sure I still made some, but I really did my best to make sure I wouldn't. But a big cultural difference that I noticed that I loved compared to like living in Canada was that everyone's just so out of every other's way. Like even on the train, when you're literally being pushed to fit everybody, you could tell everyone was still trying to stay in their own bubble and not like be in anyone else's business. And I really appreciated that, because a lot of people living in Canada, or even when I visited the States a lot of the time, people didn't have that self-awareness. And it made it a bit more nerve-wracking to be in big cities. And in Japan, I have never felt safer. I really appreciated that. It's just such a stark difference that now it's like I've lived there compared to just visiting for 2 weeks. It's like most of the time I'm thinking, can I just go back to Japan, please? Bring me back.
Yeah, it's very hard to used to. And so how long have you been lived in Japan? What term?
I lived there from the very beginning of July last year up until mid-December.
About half a year. Okay, I see. And may I ask you why you came back to Canada? So why didn't you stay more in Japan?
短いことお金がなかった。Completely ran out of money. It was actually not really that expensive living wise. Like I was able to, Japan also taught me how to budget because this was my first time even moving out of my hometown's first house. Like this is the house that I literally grew up in right now. It was moving to Japan was literally the first time I moved out ever. So it also living there taught me how to budget and everything. And like I did well with my budget that way. But if your viewers watch episode 2 of my series that drops next week, you'll see, unfortunately, half of my savings just flew out the window from bad happenings. Yeah, so I was supposed to stay for a full year. But because of those things and not being able to get a job while in school, I wasn't able to stay as long as I was hoping.
Can you tell us what do you want to do if you could come back to Japan? And what do you want to eat first? And where do you want to go?
Well, that was a hard one when you gave me these questions. That was the hardest one. I was having a hard time answering. I was like, there's so many more things I want to do. Because being in school, it took up more time than I was anticipating, so I didn't get to travel as much as I would have liked to. I just want to travel more around Japan. Like honestly, I don't really care where I go. Like I'm glad I got to go to Kyoto and Okinawa for this time, but with Rosemary, since she's never been, I want to take both of them to where I was living at the time in Saitama. I probably will try to go to Okinawa again now that I'm not an Accutane and I'm not going to burn like a tomato.
Yeah.
But I also want to take them to the Ghibli Museum / new amusement park thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about going there when I was first there, but I was like, you know what? Like when Trisha and Rosemary and I were kids, they showed me the Ghibli films. So I was like, that would be really unfair if I went without them. So I was like, nope, that's going to be for next time.
Sounds great. And what about food? So we didn't talk about food. So what do you think about Japanese food and what do you want to eat again when you come to Japan?
This sounds very like cliche. But I really love their sushi.
It's okay. I love it too.
Yeah, like the sushi was always the highlight for me. And so I really want to go. The first thing I'm going to do when I go back is go to a sushi conveyor belt restaurant. Nothing beats like a fresh Japanese meal. I've had some good Japanese restaurants here, but like when you've had it from like actually in Japan compared to like when you're not there, it's such a massive difference.
Different level. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and I really want to. I think I did try a good amount of Japanese food there because I really wanted to expand my palate. But I think when I go the next time, I'm gonna make sure that I have like the town's main dish. Like Okinawa, I did that. I forget what it was called.
Goya champuru? No?
Yeah, that sounds really familiar. I just remember asking them, what is your favorite dish of Okinawa? And they would just be like, okay, here you go. I don't have any food allergies, so I'm basically open to trying anything. So every restaurant, I was like, I've never had that. I will try that.
Yes, it's very good. Okay, thank you very much today for sharing with us your experience, and I wish you to go back to Japan as soon as possible.
So do I. I can't wait to come back. Thank you so much for having me on your channel.
Thank you.
So if you guys are interested in seeing a true in-the-moment experience of a foreigner moving to Japan and quite frankly how hard it was and how much I really wanted to go, please visit my channel, The Lee Factor. You'll also see cosplay, like Sailor Moon, for example, on the channel as well. So I hope you visit it, and thank you guys so much for watching.
そう、皆さん概要欄からぜひリさんの SNS をチェックしてみてください。はい、ということで動画最後まで見てくださってありがとうございました。